Ambassador Rena pressed her fingertips against the cold viewing glass and watched the stars drift past in silence. 300 diplomatic reports sat unread on her personal terminal, but none of them mattered right now. In 2 hours, she would meet representatives from the newest species to crack the secret of faster-than-light travel. Humanity. The word felt strange even in her thoughts. The HFY people had been part of the Council of United Civilizations for 6,000 years. Rena herself had served as an ambassador for 2 centuries. She had welcomed 43 species into the galactic community during her career. This should have been routine. Review their ships, assign them a military classification, grant them voting rights proportional to their fleet strength, and move on to the next bit of paperwork. But something felt different this time. Rena pulled up the preliminary reports on her datapad. Humanity had only achieved nuclear fission 140 years ago. 40 years later, they had split their world government into 2 hostile factions that nearly destroyed their planet. Then, somehow, they had unified again and reached for the stars. Their development speed was unusual, but not unprecedented. The Krell had gone from steam power to antimatter reactors in just 200 years. What bothered Rena was the lack of information. Most species eagerly shared details about their vessels before the formal inspection. They wanted to impress the Council, to show off their engineering achievements. The humans had sent exactly one message in response to the inspection request. It read simply, "We accept your invitation. Our diplomatic escort will arrive at the designated coordinates in the neutral zone." Diplomatic escort. Not fleet. Not armada. Just an escort. The door to her quarters slid open and her assistant Pella entered carrying 2 steaming cups. The Orvathai woman was young by her species standards, barely 70 years old, but she had a sharp mind for details that Rena valued. "High Arbiter Solon has called everyone to the observation dome," Pella said, handing Rena one of the cups. "The humans sent confirmation. They will arrive within the hour." Rena took a sip of the bitter tea and nodded. "How many council members are attending?" "Representatives from 7 major civilizations." War leader Grath insisted on bringing his dreadnought as a show of Krell military superiority. Pella's tone made it clear what she thought of that decision. He has been boasting to anyone who will listen that his ship is the largest vessel in this sector. "The Fist of Dominion is impressive," Rena admitted. At 1,100 meters long, the Krell dreadnought represented the pinnacle of aggressive military design. Its weapons could crack a moon in half. "But size is not everything. Tell that to Grath," Pella muttered. They made their way through the winding corridors of Harmony's Gate. The diplomatic station had been built 8,000 years ago after the Vorthian War, designed as neutral ground where species could meet without fear. Its observation dome was a marvel of engineering, a transparent sphere 80 meters across that offered an unobstructed view of space. When Rena and Pella arrived, they found the dome already crowded with officials. High Arbiter Solon stood at the center, his tall frame draped in the formal robes of his office. The Orvathai leader was ancient even by his people's standards, nearly 400 years old. His face was a map of wrinkles, but his eyes remained sharp. Grath stood near one of the viewing panels, arms crossed over his broad chest. The Krell were a warrior species, and Grath embodied everything that meant. Scars covered his gray skin, each one a story he was eager to share. Behind him through the transparent dome, his dreadnought hung in space like a threat made solid. "Ambassador Rena," Solon greeted her warmly. "I trust you have reviewed the available information on our newest guests." "What little there is," Rena replied. "They have been remarkably quiet about their capabilities. Probably because they have little to show," Grath rumbled. "A species barely 2 centuries old? They likely cobbled together a few mining ships and called them warships. I have seen it before." Solon smiled diplomatically, but said nothing. He had learned long ago not to argue with Grath unless absolutely necessary. Pella moved to her station near the sensor array. As the ranking Orvathai technical officer present, she would be responsible for scanning and cataloging the human vessels. She began running diagnostic checks on her equipment, her 4-fingered hands moving across the holographic controls with practiced ease. "Long-range sensors are detecting something," Pella announced suddenly. Her voice carried a note of confusion. At the edge of the system. How many ships? Solon asked. Just one, sir. Pella frowned at her readouts. But that cannot be correct. The mass signature is impossible. Grath laughed, a deep, booming sound that echoed through the dome. Your equipment is malfunctioning. Perhaps the humans sent a small moon to meet us. I am running diagnostics now, Pella said, ignoring him. Her frown deepened. Sir, the readings are accurate. I am detecting a single vessel. Mass approximately 47 million metric tons. The dome fell silent. Rena felt her pulse quicken. 47 million metric tons. That was 5 times larger than the ancient Vorthian Star Cathedral, the largest warship ever constructed. The cathedral had been decommissioned 4,000 years ago under council pressure. That is impossible, Grath said, but his voice had lost its boastful edge. Run the diagnostics again. Solon ordered quietly to Pella's hands flew across her controls. 30 seconds passed, then a minute. Finally, she looked up, her face pale. The readings are accurate. High Arbiter. Whatever is approaching, it is massive. Rena moved to the viewing screen and adjusted the magnification. At first, she saw nothing but empty space. Then reality rippled. The fabric of space-time bent and twisted as something enormous dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The human vessel emerged into normal space like a leviathan rising from deep water. Rena's mind struggled to process what she was seeing. The ship was impossibly large, a metal mountain that blotted out the stars behind it. Its hull was dark gray, almost black, and covered in what looked like thousands of weapon emplacements. The ship's length stretched on and on. Rena counted seconds as her eyes tracked from bow to stern. 8 kilometers, perhaps more. Through the dome, Grath's dreadnought suddenly looked like a toy boat floating next to an aircraft carrier. What have we invited into the galaxy? Rena whispered that a communication came through on the public channel. The voice was human, female, and disturbingly cheerful. Harmony's Gate. This is Terran Diplomatic Corps Vessel Sentinel's Watch. We have arrived as requested. Where would you like us to park our escort ship? Escort ship. Rena felt ice water flood her veins. This monster was just an escort. The emergency session began in chaos. Council members from 7 civilizations crowded into the secure conference chamber, voices rising over one another in a dozen languages. High Arbiter Solon raised his hand for silence, but was ignored. Rena had never seen the council so shaken. Grath slammed his fist on the table. This is exactly why we have protocols. A species that knew should never have been allowed to develop unchecked. They violated no laws, Rena countered. Council regulations limit weapons technology, not ship size. Then our regulations are inadequate. A representative from Avelix Combined pointed at the holographic display showing the Sentinel's Watch. The human ship rotated slowly in the projection, its scale making everyone in the room uncomfortable. That vessel could destroy any dreadnought in the galaxy. It makes a mockery of our entire military structure. Solon finally managed to establish order. We will not make decisions based on fear. Pella, present your full analysis. The young Orvathai stood and activated her data pad. Technical specifications filled the displays around the room. The vessel is classified as Titan class by human designation. Length, 8.2 kilometers. Mass, 47.3 million metric tons. Crew capacity, 45,000. The power signature suggests 12 fusion reactors, each one larger than anything we have encountered. Weapons. Grath demanded. Pella's expression grew grim. That is where it becomes concerning. We have identified 400 mass driver batteries, 160 missile pods, and 80 plasma lance arrays. The ship also carries 2,000 fighter craft in internal hangars. Silence fell over the chamber. Those numbers represented more firepower than most species possessed in their entire fleet. There is more, Pella continued. The vessel has manufacturing facilities. It can produce replacement ships during extended voyages. It is self-sufficient for 30 years without resupply. It is not a warship, said Ambassador Telric of the Velix. It is a mobile fortress, a nation unto itself. Solon turned to his military advisors. Assessment. General Corvas of the Council Defense Fleet looked like he had aged 10 years in the past hour. If the humans are hostile, we cannot stop them. Not with one ship. Not unless we unite every fleet in Council space. And even then victory is not certain. How many of these ships do they have? Someone asked. We do not know, Rena admitted. They said this was a diplomatic escort. The implications hung heavy in the air. If this monster was just an escort, what did humanity consider a proper warship? Solon made a decision. We will proceed with the planned meeting. Ambassador Rena, you will lead our delegation. Find out what these humans want, and if they want domination. Graf asked, then we will know soon enough. Solon replied, quietly. 2 hours later, Rena waited in docking bay 7 as the human shuttle approached. She had chosen this location carefully. It was large enough to avoid seeming insulting, but small enough to seem casual. She wanted the humans to feel welcome while she assessed their intentions. The shuttle was surprisingly modest, barely 30 meters long. It docked smoothly, and the airlock cycled. Rena straightened her diplomatic robes and prepared herself. The human who emerged was not what she expected. Female, average height for her species, perhaps 40 standard years old. She wore a simple uniform of dark blue with minimal decoration. Her hair was pulled back in a practical style, and her eyes were a warm brown. She looked more like a merchant captain than a warrior. Ambassador Rena, the human extended her hand in the traditional human greeting. I'm Captain Diana Webb. It's an honor to meet you. Rena took the hand and shook it carefully. Human grip strength was considerable, but Webb kept it gentle. Welcome to Harmony's Gate, Captain. We are pleased to finally meet your people. 2 more humans followed Webb out of the shuttle. One was male, darker-skinned, with gray in his hair. The other was female, younger, carrying a data case. Both wore the same simple uniform. No weapons, no guards, just 3 people. I hope our arrival didn't cause too much disruption, Webb said as they walked toward the conference room. Traffic control seemed a bit flustered about where to put us. Your ship is larger than we anticipated, Rena said carefully. Really? Webb seemed genuinely surprised. The Sentinel's watch is actually on the smaller end of our Titan-class vessels. We thought about bringing the Eternal Vigil, but she's nearly 10 kilometers, and we figured that might be overkill for a diplomatic meeting. Rena nearly stumbled. There were bigger ships, multiple ships. She forced her expression to remain neutral. The conference room had been prepared with care. Comfortable seating, refreshments from multiple worlds, careful attention to lighting and temperature. Solon sat at the head of the table with Graf on his right. Other council representatives filled the remaining seats. Captain Webb took her seat without hesitation. Her 2 officers flanked her. She accepted a cup of water and took a sip before looking around the table. Thank you all for agreeing to meet with us. Humanity is eager to join the galactic community. Let's discuss your military capabilities, Graf said bluntly. Your ship is unlike anything we've seen. The Sentinel's watch. Webb pulled out a datapad. Sure. What would you like to know? Her openness caught everyone off guard. Most species were defensive about military specifications. Webb seemed happy to share everything. How many Titan-class vessels does humanity possess? Solon asked. 6 currently operational. 2 more under construction. They serve as our primary diplomatic and defense platforms. Webb pulled up a holographic display showing all 6 ships. Each one was massive, though she was right about the Sentinel's watch being smaller. The Eternal Vigil dwarfed even this monster. Why? Rena found herself asking. Why build such enormous ships? Webb looked at her with an expression of genuine confusion. Because we didn't know what was out here. Earth's history is violent, Ambassador. We nearly destroyed ourselves 3 separate times. When we finally unified and reached the stars, we made a choice as a species. Never again would humanity be vulnerable to threats we couldn't defend against. You built these ships because you were afraid? Graf's tone was mocking. We built these ships because we were prepared, Webb corrected gently. Fear makes you hide. Preparation makes you strong. And if we refuse your membership, Another council member challenged. What then? Webb met his gaze steadily. Then we would be disappointed, but respectful of your decision. We're not here to force anything. We're here because we believe cooperation benefits everyone. She leaned forward slightly. Look, I understand this is overwhelming. You've maintained peace for thousands of years. Then we show up with ships that could challenge that peace. But consider this. Would you rather have us inside your system, bound by treaties and agreements, or outside it where you have no influence? It was a good point, Rena had to admit. A very good point. The meeting continued for 3 more hours. Webb answered every question patiently. She provided technical data freely. She explained human philosophy, their history, their hopes for the future. She never once made a threat or demanded anything. When it ended, Rena felt more confused than when it started. The humans seemed genuine. But could anyone with that much power truly be trusted? Sleep refused to come. Rena lay in her quarters and stared at the ceiling while her mind replayed the meeting. Captain Webb's words echoed in her thoughts. Never again would humanity be vulnerable. The philosophy made sense in a tragic way, but it left one critical question unanswered. What would humanity do with all that power? History provided a grim answer. The Council existed because of the Vorthian hegemony. 8,000 years ago, the Vorthian had built massive war temples and claimed peaceful intentions. They spoke of mutual defense and cooperative security. Then they had tried to conquer the galaxy. Millions died in the war that followed. Entire species went extinct. The Council's first law was written in blood and ash. No civilization may threaten the security of all others. Did humanity threaten that security? Rena could not say. Webb seemed sincere, but so had the Vorthian ambassadors right up until their fleets opened fire. Unable to rest, Rena rose and moved to her personal terminal. Humans had done something unusual during their first contact. They had transmitted their entire history to the Council, unrestricted and uncensored. Most species carefully curated what they shared, highlighting achievements and minimizing failures. Humanity had sent everything. Wars, genocides, near-extinction events, all of it laid bare. Rena began to read. The scope of human violence shocked her. They had fought each other continuously for 10,000 years. Wars over territory, resources, ideology, religion. They had developed increasingly efficient ways to kill each other. Chemical weapons, biological warfare, nuclear bombs. At one point, they had built enough nuclear weapons to destroy their planet 20 times over. But something else emerged from the data. Between the wars were stories of reconciliation. Enemies who became allies. Nations that had slaughtered each other, now living in peace. She found something called the Marshall Plan, where one human nation had helped rebuild the nations it had fought against. She read about truth and reconciliation commissions, where victims and perpetrators faced each other and chose forgiveness over revenge. Humans had a word that appeared repeatedly in their philosophy. Ubuntu. It came from one of their ancient cultures. Roughly translated, it meant that individual humanity was inextricably linked to the humanity of others. I am because we are. Rena found herself reading testimony from human peacekeepers. Soldiers who had volunteered to stand between warring factions, often from their own former enemies. One account particularly struck her. A human soldier describing why she protected refugees from a nation her own country had fought decades earlier. Because they're people. Because they're afraid. Because someone has to stand between them and the darkness. Someone has to stand between them and the darkness. Dawn found Rena still reading. Pella arrived with breakfast and found her surrounded by holographic displays showing human history. You did not sleep, Pella observed. I needed to understand them. Rena rubbed her tired eyes. Do you know what frightens me most? Not their ships, not their weapons. What frightens me is that I want to believe them. Is that so terrible? The Vorthian were also convincing. Rena closed the displays with a gesture. I need to speak with Captain Webb again. Privately. Arrange a meeting in neutral territory. Make it seem casual. 2 hours later, Rena sat in a small cafe in the civilian section of the station. The establishment served food and drink from 30 different worlds. She had chosen a table by the window where ships drifted past in the darkness beyond. Captain Webb arrived exactly on time. She wore casual clothes now, simple trousers and a shirt. She could have been any traveler passing through the station. "Thank you for meeting me," Rena said as Webb sat down. "Of course." Webb ordered something called coffee from the automated server. "Is this about the inspection? Did we miss something in our documentation?" "No, this is personal." Rena studied the human's face. "I spent the night reading your history. All of it." Webb's expression shifted slightly. "Ah, that must have been disturbing. Why did you share everything?" "Most species try to present their best image. Because honesty matters." Webb took a sip of her coffee. "You can't build trust on half-truths. If you're going to judge us on who we actually are, not some carefully constructed image." Rena leaned forward. "I read about your wars, your violence, your capacity for cruelty. But I also read about what came after. The healing, the forgiveness. Help me understand. Which is the real humanity?" Webb was quiet for a long moment. "Both. We're capable of terrible things. We've proven that throughout our history. But we're also capable of learning from our mistakes, of choosing to be better. And the ships? The weapons? Insurance." Webb said simply. "We learned that being weak doesn't keep you safe. It just makes you a victim. But we also learned that being strong doesn't mean you have to be cruel." Rena chose her next words carefully. "If another species threatened the Council, would humanity help us?" Webb looked genuinely confused by the question. "Of course we would. Why wouldn't we? Because it might not serve your interests. Because you might have nothing to gain. Ambassador, let me ask you something." Webb set down her coffee. "If you saw a child drowning, would you save them?" "Of course. Even if that child was a stranger? Even if saving them put you at risk?" "Yes." "Why?" Rena opened her mouth to answer, then paused. Why would she? She owed nothing to a hypothetical drowning child. But the idea of not helping was unthinkable. Webb smiled softly. "That's humanity's answer too. We help because someone needs help. Because we can. Because the alternative is unconscionable." She paused. "We built these ships because we can afford to. Can we afford not to when someone might need them?" "Most species operate on calculated self-interest," Rena said. "Most species haven't almost destroyed themselves 3 times," Webb replied. "We learned the hard way that everyone's safety is connected. When one part of humanity hurt, all of humanity felt it eventually. We're hoping that lesson applies to the galaxy too." Rena found herself wanting to believe. Desperately wanting to believe. But belief without evidence was foolishness. "How can we trust you?" she asked quietly. "Time," Webb said. "Give us time to prove ourselves. Let's join the Council. Hold us to the same standards as everyone else. If we abuse our power, you'll know. If we honor our commitments, you'll know that too." They talked for another hour. Not about specifications or military capabilities, but about philosophy and values. Webb spoke about human art, music, literature. She described Earth's diversity, how hundreds of cultures had maintained their unique identities while building a unified world government. She talked about human children being taught from birth that their actions affected everyone around them. When they finally parted, Rena felt something she had not expected. Hope. She returned to find Solon waiting in her quarters. The High Arbiter looked ancient and tired. "The Council is divided," he said without preamble. "Grath wants humanity rejected. He sees them as a threat that must be contained. Others agree with him. And you?" Solon moved to the window and looked out at the Sentinel's watch. The massive ship hung in space like a monument to human determination. "I fought in the last days of the Vorthian War. I watched planets burn. I swore I would never let such a threat rise again." He turned to face her. "But I also swore to be just. Humanity has broken no laws. They have made no threats. Rejecting them might create the very enemy we fear." "Then what do? We vote," Solon said. "Tomorrow. And we hope we choose wisely." The voting chamber was older than most civilizations. Its walls carried inscriptions in languages long dead, reminders of species that had either evolved beyond recognition or vanished entirely. Representatives from 43 member civilizations filled the curved benches that ringed the central floor. Above them, the dome displayed stars that had been observed from this very spot for 8 millennia. Rena took her place among the HFY delegation and watched as Solon moved to the speaker's podium. The High Arbiter looked every one of his 400 years today. The weight of the decision ahead seemed to press down on his shoulders. "We gather to decide humanity's petition for council membership," Solon began. His voice carried clearly through the chamber's ancient acoustics. "Before we vote, we must ask ourselves a question. Do we judge species by their capability to do harm or by their demonstrated intent?" Grath rose immediately. "We judge by both. Intent can change. Capability remains. Humanity possesses weapons that threaten every civilization here. That cannot be ignored." "War leader Grath raises a valid concern," said Ambassador Kellix of the Orvithai Collective. "But I would point out that capability and intent must be weighed together. The Krell Empire possesses dreadnoughts capable of cracking moons. We do not fear them because we have treaties that bind their actions. The Krell earned their place through centuries of cooperation," Grath countered. "Humanity has existed in our awareness for mere months. How can we trust them?" Rena found herself standing. Protocol dictated she wait to be recognized, but the words demanded to be spoken. "High Arbiter, may I address the chamber?" Solon nodded. All eyes turned to her. "I have spent considerable time studying humanity," Rena said. "Their history is violent. They have committed atrocities against their own kind. This is undeniable. But what I found most illuminating was what they chose to do after those atrocities." She activated a holographic display showing human historical records. After their most destructive war, the victors helped rebuild their enemies. After periods of oppression, they established systems to acknowledge harm and pursue justice. After developing weapons that could destroy their world, they chose to limit and control them. Humanity's story is not one of unbroken violence. It is a story of learning from mistakes. "Pretty words," said Representative Thuras of the Kelvin Assembly. But the Vorthian also spoke of learning and growth. They promised cooperation right up until they began their conquest. "Then let us not repeat the mistakes made with the Vorthian," Rena responded. "We ignored warning signs because we wanted to believe their lies. With humanity, we have the opposite situation. We see the weapons and assume the worst, ignoring everything else they have shown us. Captain Webb and her crew have been nothing but forthcoming. They have violated no laws. They have made no demands. They ask only to be judged fairly. And if we are wrong," Grath demanded, "if we admit them and they prove hostile, if we reject them and they prove peaceful, we create an enemy through our own prejudice," Rena countered. "We must choose which risk we can live with." The debate continued for 3 hours. Representatives argued both sides with passion. Some pointed to humanity's technological progress as evidence of dangerous ambition. Others noted that rapid advancement was not inherently suspicious. The Lyran Concord, a federation of smaller species, spoke in favor of admission. They argued that rejecting humanity would send a message that only militarily weak species were welcome in the council. Finally, Solon called for the vote. Each civilization would cast their decision through a secure system. A simple majority was required for admission, but the High Arbiter could impose conditions on membership if he deemed them necessary. The chamber fell silent as votes were registered. Holographic tallies appeared above the podium. Rena watched the numbers climb and felt her chest tighten. The count was close, very close. After 10 minutes, Solon announced the results. 24 votes in favor, 19 opposed. Humanity's petition for council membership is approved. Relief washed over Rena, followed immediately by anxiety. The margin was narrow. Nearly half the council had voted against admission. That division would create problems. Solon raised his hand for silence as arguments erupted across the chamber. "The vote is final. However, I am imposing conditions. Humanity will enter a probationary period of 2 standard years. During this time, all Titan-class vessels operating in Council space must be registered and tracked. Humanity will be granted provisional membership in the Security Council, but with limited authority. After 2 years, we will vote again on full, unrestricted membership. It was a compromise. Not perfect, but workable. Graff looked furious. Others seemed relieved. The chamber slowly emptied as representatives departed to inform their governments. Rena made her way to the diplomatic receiving room where Captain Webb waited. The human woman looked up as Rena entered, her expression cautiously hopeful. The council has voted to accept humanity's petition, Rena said formally. Congratulations, Captain. You are now members of the galactic community. Webb smiled, genuine warmth in her expression. Thank you, Ambassador. We won't let you down. There are conditions. Rena explained the probationary period and registration requirements. Webb listened carefully and nodded. That's more than fair. We expected some level of oversight. Webb extended her hand. Thank you for believing in us. Rena took the hand and shook it. Do not thank me yet. Prove that my belief was justified. Over the next 3 months, humanity integrated into council systems. They registered their 6 Titan-class vessels and provided detailed tracking capabilities. They assigned diplomatic staff to council headquarters. They participated in security briefings and trade negotiations. They were model members, careful to respect protocols and avoid conflicts. The Sentinel's Watch took up a patrol route in the outer territories, far from major population centers. This was a deliberate choice, Rena learned. The humans understood their ships made others nervous. They would prove themselves through actions, not proximity. Life found a rhythm. Tensions slowly eased. Some species remained suspicious, but others began to appreciate having humanity's military strength as part of the collective defense. Trade agreements were signed. Cultural exchanges began. Children on HFY learned about Earth in their schools. Then the distress call came. Rena was reviewing trade manifests when alarms sounded throughout the station. She rushed to the operations center and found chaos. Multiple displays showed emergency broadcasts from Refuge 2, a remote colony world in the outer territories. What is happening? She demanded. Pella pulled up tactical displays. Pirates. A large fleet. At least 30 vessels. They are attacking the colony. Population? Rena asked, though she dreaded the answer. 90,000, mostly Lyran refugees. The local defense force has 6 patrol ships. Rena did the math instantly. 6 patrol ships against 30 pirate vessels. It would be a massacre. Where is the nearest council response fleet? 8 hours away, Pella said quietly. By then it will be over. Rena stared at the tactical display. 30 small dots representing pirate ships converging on a helpless world. And there, at the edge of the system, one massive dot. The Sentinel's Watch was 45 minutes away. Council regulations were clear. Member species could not deploy military assets without authorization from the High Arbiter. The protocol existed to prevent conflicts from escalating. It had kept peace for thousands of years. But those regulations had been written assuming help could arrive in time. Rena watched the tactical display and felt utterly helpless. 8 hours. That was how long it would take for the Council response fleet to reach Refuge 2. In 8 hours, 90,000 Lyran refugees would be dead or enslaved. Can we reach Captain Webb? Rena asked. Pella nodded and opened a secure channel. The holographic display flickered and resolved into Captain Webb's face. Behind her, the bridge of the Sentinel's Watch hummed with activity. Ambassador, we received the distress calls, Webb said immediately. What are our orders? Rena hesitated. She had no authority to give those orders. The High Arbiter must authorize any military action. He is currently at a diplomatic function 8 hours away. By the time we reach him and receive authorization, the colony will have fallen. So we do nothing. Webb's tone was flat, controlled, but Rena could hear the tension beneath. Council protocol requires, I'm aware of the protocol, Ambassador. Webb cut her off, something she had never done before. I'm asking what you expect us to do. We can reach the colony in 45 minutes. Every minute we debate is a minute those people don't have. Rena closed her eyes. This was the test, the moment that would define everything. If humanity acted without authorization, It could be seen as a violation of council law. It could justify every fear Grath and the others had expressed. But if they did nothing, 90,000 people would die, while a ship capable of saving them sat idle. There is a provision, Pella said suddenly. She pulled up the relevant regulations. Emergency Clause 17. Member species may act independently to prevent imminent mass casualty events when council authorization is unavailable. That clause has never been invoked, Rena said. Then perhaps it is time, Pella replied. Rena looked back at Webb. The human captain was already reviewing data on her own displays. Her tactical officer was plotting courses. Her weapons officer was running system checks. They were preparing to act regardless of what Rena said. If you do this, Rena said slowly, you may face consequences. The council may rule against you. Then we'll face those consequences, Webb said. But I won't watch 90,000 people die when I can stop it. That's not who we are. There it was. The moment of truth. Rena made her decision. Emergency Clause 17 applies. You're authorized to render assistance. But Captain, be careful. The galaxy is watching. Webb's expression hardened into determination. All hands to battle stations. Plot course for Refuge 2. Maximum speed. This is not a drill. The channel closed. On the tactical display, the massive dot representing the Sentinel's watch began moving. It accelerated with surprising speed for something so large. Within seconds, it reached faster than light velocity and vanished from the display. Rena sat down heavily. What had she just authorized? Pella placed a hand on her shoulder. You made the right choice. I hope history agrees with you, Rena murmured. Across the galaxy, alarms sounded in military headquarters. Every civilization with long-range sensors detected the Titan-class warship changing course. Command centers scrambled to understand what was happening. Was this an attack? A defection? The beginning of the conflict everyone feared. Grath's dreadnought received the alert and immediately changed course to pursue. But the Sentinel's watch was far faster. Within minutes, it was clear the Krell could not intercept in time. Solon was pulled out of a diplomatic dinner to take an emergency call. When he learned what was happening, his face went gray. Can we recall them? They are already at the colony. High Arbiter, his aide reported. Then all we can do is pray they act with honor. At Refuge 2, the situation had gone from bad to catastrophic. The 6 local patrol ships had been destroyed. Orbital defenses were offline. Pirate vessels were in low orbit, bombarding the surface. Refugee ships attempted to flee, but were picked off one by one. The colony governor sent one final message before her communication center was destroyed. To anyone listening, we are dying here. Please, someone help us. Space rippled. The Sentinel's watch dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. On the human ship's bridge, Captain Webb stood and surveyed the tactical display. 30 pirate vessels, mostly older frigates and corvettes, but several stolen military destroyers. The colony burning below. Open a channel on all frequencies, Webb ordered. Her communications officer nodded. Channel open, Captain. Webb's voice carried across the void. Attention, hostile vessels. This is Captain Diana Webb of the Terran Diplomatic Corps ship Sentinel's Watch. You are attacking a protected refugee colony under Council jurisdiction. Cease fire immediately and withdraw, or we will engage. The pirate response was predictable. Missiles and plasma fire streaked toward the Sentinel's Watch. The weapons impacted against the human ship's shields and dissipated harmlessly. The massive vessel didn't even slow down. Well, Webb said quietly, we tried. All batteries, your weapons free. Target engines and weapons systems only. I want them disabled, not destroyed. Captain, her weapons officer acknowledged. The Sentinel's Watch opened fire. 400 mass driver batteries spoke as one. Magnetically accelerated projectiles crossed the distance at relativistic speeds. The precision was surgical. Pirate engines exploded. Weapons arrays melted. Within 30 seconds, half the pirate fleet was crippled. The remaining vessels tried to scatter. Human fighter craft launched from internal hangars and spread across the battlefield like a net. They corralled the fleeing pirates, forcing them into formations where the Sentinels' watch could disable them with minimal collateral damage. 6 minutes after engaging, the battle was over. 30 pirate vessels drifted in space, engines destroyed, weapons offline but hulls intact. Crews alive. Captain Webb had kept her word. Not a single enemy ship destroyed. Launch rescue operations, Webb ordered. Get medical teams to the surface. I want damage assessments and casualty reports within the hour. And someone find out how many refugees need evacuation. As her crew scrambled to help the colony, Webb allowed herself a moment to breathe. They had saved the refugees, but she wondered what price humanity would pay for this unauthorized action that on Harmony's gate. Rena watched the tactical feed in stunned silence. The entire engagement had lasted 6 minutes. 6 minutes to disable 30 hostile vessels without destroying a single one. The precision was terrifying and awe-inspiring in equal measure. "What have we unleashed?" someone whispered, but Rena saw something different in those 6 minutes. She saw restraint, power used with surgical precision, victory without massacre. This was not the Vorthian hegemony crushing opposition. This was something else entirely. She opened a channel to Solon. "High Arbiter, I recommend we dispatch Council observers to Refuge 2 immediately. The galaxy needs to see exactly what happened here." Solon's shuttle touched down on Refuge 2 30 hours after the battle. The High Arbiter had traveled faster than protocol dictated, driven by the need to see the aftermath with his own eyes. Rena accompanied him, along with observers from a dozen civilizations. Even Grath had come, though his expression promised nothing good. What they found was not what any of them expected. The colony's main settlement sprawled across a river valley. Burn marks scarred buildings where pirate bombardment had struck, but those burns were being repaired. Human engineers worked alongside Lyran colonists, patching walls and restoring power systems. Medical tents dotted the central plaza, human doctors treating injured refugees. Children played in the streets again, watched over by a mix of human soldiers and local volunteers. Governor Tellis met them at the landing pad. The elderly Lyran woman moved slowly, supported by Kane, but her eyes were bright with fierce gratitude. "High Arbiter Solon," she said, bowing as deeply as her injured leg allowed. "Thank you for coming. Though I confess, you are late. The humans saved us before the council could arrive." It was a pointed comment, but not unfair. Solon acknowledged it with a nod. "We came as quickly as we could, Governor. Please, show us what happened here." Tellis led them through the colony. Everywhere they looked, humans were helping, not supervising, not occupying, helping. A human soldier carried supplies for an elderly Lyran. Human technicians taught local engineers how to repair damaged systems. Human cooks worked in communal kitchens, preparing meals for thousands. When the pirates came, we thought we would die, Tellis explained as they walked. Our patrol ships fought bravely, but they were overwhelmed. Then the Sentinels' watch arrived. 6 minutes. That is how long it took them to disable every pirate vessel. Not destroy, disable. They could have turned those ships to vapor, but they showed restraint. And after the battle, Solon asked, Captain Webb immediately deployed medical teams. She ordered her engineers to begin repairs. She asked what we needed and provided it without hesitation. Tellis stopped and turned to face the group. "Do you know what she said to me?" She apologized. Said she wished they had arrived sooner. Can you imagine? They saved 90,000 lives, and she apologized for not saving them faster. Grath spoke for the first time. "Where are the pirate crews?" "In temporary detention facilities." Tellis pointed to a secured area near the spaceport, guarded by human security until council authorities can take custody. Captain Webb insisted on treating them humanely. She said violence ended when the shooting stopped. Solon asked to inspect the detention facilities. What he found there further challenged his assumptions. The pirate crews were held in clean, well-ventilated structures. They received adequate food, medical care, and were being processed for trial according to council law. No torture, no executions. Simple, lawful detention. They met Captain Webb in the colony's temporary command center. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, but she stood straight when the High Arbiter entered. Captain Webb, Solon said formally. You engaged in military action without authorization. Yes, sir. I did. Webb did not make excuses or try to justify her actions. I accept full responsibility. If the Council wishes to censure me or remove humanity from membership, I understand. You violated protocol, Solon continued. I did, and yet, you saved 90,000 lives. Solon gestured to the bustling colony outside. You showed remarkable restraint in combat. You provided immediate humanitarian aid. You respected council law in handling prisoners. Tell me, Captain, why did you not simply destroy the pirate fleet? Webb looked genuinely puzzled by the question. Because that was unnecessary, sir. Our goal was to stop the attack and protect the colonists. Destroying the pirates would not have accomplished that goal any better than disabling them. Some would say you missed an opportunity to demonstrate your power. We demonstrated our power by building these ships, Webb said quietly. Today we demonstrated something more important. Our values. Power means nothing if you don't use it responsibly. Grath stepped forward, his expression hard. Pretty words. But words are cheap. How do we know this was not theater? A performance to gain our trust before you reveal your true intentions. Webb met his gaze steadily. You don't, war leader. You can't know. All we can do is keep showing you who we are through our actions. Today we chose to save lives rather than take them. Tomorrow we will make similar choices. Eventually, either you will trust us or you will not. That is beyond our control. And if we choose not to trust you, Grath challenged, then we will be disappointed, Webb said simply. But we will continue to act according to our values regardless. Because those values are not dependent on your approval. Silence fell over the command center. Solon found himself re-evaluating everything he thought he knew. The Vorthian had been predators wearing the mask of civilization. But these humans were something different. They had power, but chose restraint. They had weapons, but preferred mercy. They could dominate, but sought cooperation instead. I need to speak with my council colleagues, Solon said finally. The deliberations took 2 days. Council representatives reviewed every aspect of the Refuge 2 incident. They examined tactical recordings of the battle. They interviewed colonists. They inspected the detention facilities. They analyzed human actions with minute scrutiny, looking for evidence of ulterior motives. What they found was consistency. At every decision point, humanity had chosen the path that minimized harm while maximizing help. It was not theater. It was simply who they were. On the 3rd day, Solon called for a vote. Not on censure or punishment, but on humanity's full membership. The probationary period would end early. Humanity would be granted all rights and responsibilities of a council civilization. The vote was not even close. 38 in favor. 5 opposed. Even some who had voted against admission 3 months ago now supported full membership. Grath abstained, but Rena noted he did not vote against. When Solon informed Captain Webb of the decision, she accepted with quiet dignity. No boasting, no celebration. Just a simple acknowledgement and a promise to continue serving the greater good. 6 months later, Rena stood in an observation dome and watched the Sentinels depart on patrol. The massive ship no longer frightened her. Instead, she found it comforting. Somewhere in the dark between the stars, that vessel stood watch. And she knew if trouble came, if someone needed help, the humans would answer. A young Lyran child stood beside her, face pressed against the viewing glass. The girl's family had been among those saved from Refuge 2. She pointed at the departing ship. Are the humans heroes? She asked her parent. The adult Lyran considered the question carefully. They're people. People with great power who choose to use it wisely. Perhaps that is what heroes are. Rena smiled. Yes, she thought. Perhaps that is exactly what heroes are. The Sentinel's watch vanished into the depths of space, carrying with it humanity's promise. To stand between the innocent and harm. To use strength in service of mercy. To be the shield that others could shelter behind. And across the galaxy, civilizations that had once feared them now slept easier, knowing humanity stood watch in the darkness.